All right, we're back. We're back, baby.
All right, time for the final part of this show.
Part 4 of
and
show
this time we'll not
1.
bombard the majority of the show. So,
Well, you talked great about the gaming. I mean, everybody, I learned something. I didn't know anything about the Nintendo Switch 2.
well,
I didn't know anything about the gaming industry in general.
But enough about me.
Yeah, enough about the gaming industry. We're going to call the last section, we're going to call it Fletcher's Love Language. Where we talk a little bit about my personal life, which is always fun to talk about, but just the general state of affairs in human nature, which I believe is, like, again, to go back to the original premise of the show, the platform itself, I believe that people have become extremely tribal, distant to information exchange, definitely distant to relationship exchange, or what I call relationship exchange, which I just don't find women in America very open to the idea of being in a long-term relationship. It's almost like women, and this is not a misogynistic take, this isn't a man versus woman take.
We love women. We value human beings. I value men and women equally. There's no, well, it's okay if men do this, but it's not okay for women, or okay for women to do that, but then men, no. I'm an equal opportunist. We're a human being. We're all God's. By the way, yes, I am a Christian, so I do believe that God, we are all God's children. We're all made in the image of God, and I'm not better than him. He's not better than the 3 ladies on the street. Nobody's better than anybody.
Well,
The
I'm better than some of my exes. I'm going to say that on camera. I'm better than some.
Okay, in terms of some of the moral compasses, sure, but
unfortunately,
God
nice
loves
people.
those
Those
exes.
people were not nice people. But
Sure,
you're right.
but God does value
under the
mistakes,
umbrella.
and I hate to tell you,
God and planet
not to
Earth.
say I wouldn't disagree.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But in terms of, like, I just feel like there's a barrier up around men and women at a point that I've never seen before. Post-COVID, I think we've become more distant between not only just people in general, but especially the genders. The genders have, like, become further apart. They're not interested. Women in general, again, this is a general platform. We're just talking about ideas. I just think that in general, they're not open to being in relationships because you have a microwave society where you can just go on Bumble, you can go on Tinder, you can go on Match.com, you can go anywhere, and you can just flat out, like, find another relationship in 30 seconds.
Can I actually respond to that a little bit?
Yeah,
I can actually add to that.
Like
that men have the same problem. Like both men and women that I've talked to, like, they say, well, there's not enough good women, there's not enough good men. I'm like, I think there are. You guys just aren't looking hard enough. The main areas that you're exposed to are like if you're only going to bars, yeah, no offense. I've seen some great relationships that, start off with a bar and then,
it's rare.
Yeah, it's a rare, but
It's rare.
it does happen and whatever. But, like, you gotta consider your surroundings. But I think that both sexes, both genders, have a problem with being in charge because of. I think it is a post-COVID effect where people are more divided than ever, and I think it does. And I've seen this recently. By the way, another shout out to a podcast, Pop Culture Crisis, which is like a branch of the Timcast IRL show.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, another shout out, Tim Pool, and they talk about, like, a common question, particularly, and again, this goes for anybody, but it's made more so probably like 55-45, something like that, where like one of the questions that's asked now is, what are your political views? And it's like, is that really, like, that wasn't a characteristic of why people marry each other? But now you should make sure your core values are the same, but, like, there was no test of, hey, who'd you vote for? I'm like, and a lot of people I know, they'll say, it's not your business who I voted for.
Exactly.
You know who I like? And I'll shut up after this.
No.
Is I really like what in 2016 when the election was taking place, some reporter, you've probably seen this video, if not I'll just show you. It's a fascinating video. I love Denzel Washington as an actor. And so I asked him, so who'd you vote for? He goes, none your business. He's like, it's not your business who I voted for.
Correct.
And he's like, but aren't you worried about the dangers
that.
of white supremacy and stuff? He goes, so let me tell you something right now. And I'm paraphrasing here. Only his true words can be said by him himself. But he said, like, let me tell you something. I'll just end it right here. And that's when he says, listen, regardless of who you vote for, we got to stand together.
Correct.
You know, the president cannot legislate love. You know, I don't care. In fact, my girlfriend and I, we go to a corner store pretty much every Friday or Saturday that we hang out at her place, and we very much respect him. Shout out to you, Jesse, by the way. And he told me, like, he was like, hey, I love my president. I'm like, oh, you do? You like Trump? Where he goes, dude, I don't care if it's Obama or Biden or Trump in there. I love my president.
You have to be behind
Now,
that.
do I fully agree with that? No, because I think that, like, I will support, like, if we're in war, I will support my leader.
1,000%.
But I'm not going to like everything they do, whether it's Biden, Trump, Kamala.
Correct.
Anybody like that. But that's just my whole thing but I respect his take that I love my president because he's the leader of my country. And I think there's something to be said about that.
True.
No, shut up.
No, not at all. I do think there is still post-COVID. I don't know if COVID was the main catalyst, but it definitely was a variable in doing the divide of like this extreme, what I call extreme tribalism.
I would think 2017 is when it started, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the accelerant was COVID because it isolated
that's
people.
what it was.
And then forward, people just don't want to interact like they used to. People are very, like you just said, like about political views on the dating apps. It's it's got to be at least 50% of the profiles. Trust me, I've been on the dating apps, for years.
Can't concur. I'm not on the
not
dating
all the
apps.
time. Not all the time.
I never have.
But here and there, I'll give it a go because it's like, again, the mind's like a parachute, only works when it's open. So that Mrs. Right can be out there in the future. So, like, I go on the apps and 50% of the profiles, it's a massive turnoff. First of all, you get the I am an independent woman. Okay, that's great, but I mean, really, that's what you're gonna say? Like, why don't you state like who you are as a person?
Yeah,
and that's truthfully, honestly, who they are. So they're like but they always state the political beliefs.
Yeah,
if you're MAGA or if you voted for Trump, swipe left. I mean, it's 50% of the profiles are like that, and I'm like, why? Why would that be relevant to like getting to know me as a human being?
Yeah.
And trying to see if there's a vibe there, there's an actual exchange of pheromones. Are you right for each other? Just based on one thing. I voted for a guy. I voted for a guy that I thought was better for the job.
Which is the only thing you can do.
And it didn't have anything to do with gender. I just didn't like Kamala. I didn't think she was right for the job.
And here's a fun fact is that, like, I actually I'm not going to really say I disagree. I'm just more open than I would agree. Where there are people, including women, by the way. Like, I just heard a story that I'm not going to say who just because I don't believe in putting anybody's business out there.
Yeah.
But somebody I very much care for, her family member told me that, his wife and his mother, again, two women we're talking about here, said they would never vote for a female president. Now, I'm actually more open to it. Now, do I respect the arguments that are made, like why I would never vote for a female president? Like, it's not just because, it's because she's a woman. Okay, do you have anything else beyond that? No. Okay, then I'm not going to respect that kind of argument. But if you say it's because of this, it's because of this, it's because of this, okay, at least you have reasons. I don't want to hear I will vote for someone because they're a man or I will vote for someone because they're a woman. Give me their qualities and their disqualifications, and I will make a judgment who I vote. Look, here's where I say I'm open to. I actually don't have a problem with the female president as long as they're good for their job. Just like I don't have a problem with the male president as long as they're good for the job.
Correct. If
you give me a crappy male and you give me a good female, I will vote for the female. That's just the way I am. I look for, and it's no different than a job. I think a woman should be hired based on her qualifications, and I think a man should be hired on his qualifications.
I can tell you I'm the best for the job. I had the best Bobby. It's my favorite.
Fake news.
I think he's hilarious. I don't understand why everybody's uptight about the guy. I think he's hilarious. I don't agree with everything that he does. But
same here.
that's a podcast for another day.
It
Let's
is.
stick
It
on
is.
topic in terms of love language and just the difference in the genders. People getting together, it's migrated to a zone where it's very difficult. And I'm going to say this because it's true. I have a friend that does speed dating. I have a friend that's been a matchmaker for 30 years. So I have relevancy, what I call relevancy to the topic matter, to the subject matter, and to the industries that survive on the dating world. It's extremely difficult. I'm not saying it's only difficult. I'm saying it's extremely difficult for the average guy in today's world to connect with an average female. Because the average female over the last 10 years doesn't think they're average. They all think they're, and I'm going to use the number system. So shout out to a guy named Danny. I'm no longer friends. He taught me the number system. I think I'm a 5, 1 out of 10. I don't go after 9s and 10s. Today's modern woman, everybody thinks they're an 8, 9, or 10. You're not. You're not. That's not reality. Reality is maybe you're a 5 or a 6. So stay in your lane and look for a 5 or a 6.
And I can say
they don't want to do that. And if you suggest this, you're right away. You're misogynistic, you're a terrible person, how dare you define me?
Sure.
That has nothing to do with what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to talk about reality. And reality is, if I'm a 5 and I've made a call a few times to Scarlett Johansson, she's not married, and Tulsi Gabbard, she's been married. But, you know, like, I'm not going to obtain that. I can wish, and I can definitely dream. Hi, Tulsi, how are you? But, I mean, it's not going to... It's not going to happen. That's not reality. So what's wrong with going out with a guy who's a carpenter, who's a plumber, who, you know, like back in the day, I was a truck driver, like when I first started. What's wrong? And back then even, you would get reverb, you would get pushback. Oh, you're a truck driver? What's wrong with that? Like, and I was getting told that, and currently, back then and now currently, I'm getting told that by, I'm not even going to say, somebody that doesn't even have a job. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're judging me, like, on something. If you know, a famous movie star, somebody famous wants to, like, blow me off, great. You don't even have a job. You got 2 kids by 2 different dudes, and you're going to dismiss me as if I'm not good enough to talk to you?
And that is, and again...
Give me an effing break. That's what I don't understand about the dating world. That's why we have this platform. We'll continue every week to evolve and to talk about this particular subject matter.
Yeah, this is going to be more to say on this one.
100 different directions.
You know, we could
and it's all good information. It's all good exchange because you're going to learn. I'm going to actually have those people on that own a speed dating agency, have a matchmaker like for 30 years, and give their sentiments on what's currently happening because people are just flat out not connecting. It's evidenced in the birth rate. Like, people aren't having kids in America like they used to.
I think the birth rate thing is blown out of proportion a little bit. However, I do believe there's a decline birth rate, but when they say like, but I do believe we have it. I just don't think it's like, oh, if we start reproducing now, the human extinction will happen. I don't think that. Like,
no, that's not what I'm saying. But
however,
the birth rate is
say
significantly lower than it was.
To think that there's not a decline is just ignorant.
So yeah, you can't deny that. And to talk about like just the relevancy of, you know, the parameters, the different variables in the dating world. I mean, we'll dive deeper into it. We're kind of like hamstrung, a little bit handcuffed with the 15 minutes, but each 15-minute show, like the 4th part of the show, we'll dive into it because it's going to be fun, it's going to be informational, and most of all, you're going to learn about my dating life, which is extremely interesting. So
sure is.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Yep, we'll see you next week. Thank you guys for tuning in, and honestly, I think we can even say, while this is episode 4, it's part 1 of Fletcher's perspective on life and whatever. So
yeah, it's going to get a lot better, and we're going to have a lot of fun each week.
All right. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next week. Peace.